Will you guys stop talking about Taylor Swift? No one cares.
Team Swifty, baby. Oh,
not a chance.
Mark loves T
We're all
Swift.
Swifties here, okay?
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into the Oregon Ducks weekly show right here on the Oregon Channel, the voice of college football. I'm just Ben here, but we have our normal group of degenerates. How you guys doing tonight?
Great.
yeah,
We're ready to up
living
the
dream.
Fuskies.
2 weeks of hate week, baby. I mean, who could be doing any better?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of hate. That's a lot of hate.
I got a lot of hate in my heart, guys.
How you doing, Sean, down there?
I mean, I'm with Derek there. Like 2 weeks of hate week, I couldn't be doing better. Like, fuck the dogs, okay?
All right, we waited over the 7-minute mark for YouTube, so that's fine. I almost said something within like the first 7 seconds, and YouTube does not appreciate that. Now we're over that limit, so we're good to go. Well, that is it this week.
All right, see you guys next week.
I'd say start hate week because, yes, it's 2 weeks of hate, which is a little rare, especially because the Huskies have the same amount of time. So it's a little rare. So welcome once again to the Oregon bye week. We are going to whoop the hell out of this week. We're going to kill it.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to guarantee a Ducks no loss this week. Lock it in, baby. We're not losing this week.
100-0.
If we did somehow, I would be like, I don't know what happened. Something went horribly wrong somewhere. Some editor at ESPN or something needs to be fired. So what we were going to do this week, what was that?
Wouldn't surprise you with how bad ESPN is sometimes.
Yeesh. Yeah, it's not been pretty the last multiple years. Not been pretty, especially the last year.
Hey, I love McAfee on ESPN. Screw the haters.
But even McAfee came out and said ESPN is going downhill already. Even he's saying it's going downhill. Like,
yeah.
You just got signed for a big contract, and you're already going, yeah, this is a crapshoot.
And this is coming from the dude who gets to be hammered on the air and, swear on command. And he still says the network shit. So, that tells you all you need to know right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
What was that, Sean?
You're not wrong there.
Remember, too, ESPN just got absolutely brutalized and violated by Fox and NBC during the realignment. Absolutely brutalized by Fox taking the Big Ten, NBC restoring rights to Notre Dame and the Big Ten in a way with Peacock too. So ESPN is not happy about that.
Nah, man, they're happy with a late night Mountain West game. That's fine. That's about what they deserve.
Boise State, maybe an Oregon State.
Well, we could talk about Oregon State, Washington State, because there was some news that's kind of been floating around lately, but I think it's more of the same of just hearsay, probably for clicks. But yeah, we can definitely get into looking at some of that because
with that, it's all hearsay, and nobody really truly knows what's going on with those rumors.
Oh, 100%. We know that firsthand just based off the year duration between, the Oregon rumors to the Big Ten and until the time it came to fruition. It was so many people who claimed to have sources and all this and that. Yeah, I don't believe anything that I see until, someone with a legitimate credibility says something.
Well, that was it with Oregon. Oregon and Washington already been vetted a year prior. Already cleared. Like, yeah, we'll just wait to see if we want to offer it to you, but you're good to go if we do. So, I mean, it wasn't really news to some degree. It was just like a waiting game. But once again, this is a bye week. We have nothing to stress about. All is right with the world. 5-0, number 8 in the rankings, which you could argue could be higher, could be lower, depending on who you are. Because the one thing this season is there's a lot of oddity with the rankings where we don't know how really good one team is compared to another in some ways, because a lot of teams haven't played the highest level of competition yet.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that goes back to, like, you know, if you think about Oregon and their situation with Texas Tech coming off that win at Tech, you know, if you go on social media, all you see is, oh, they struggled with Tech, they give up 30 points. But then you just kind of go across the country, across, you know, the national powerhouses, and most teams, you know, I think Michigan being the exception, has really struggled with some inferior opponents. You know, like I said on Saturday, I think this year of all years is the most wide open college football has been in quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Like, as far as like rankings and stuff go, there's so much that could be different, but at the same time, you know, we were talking the other day that, like, I feel like the top 3 are at least set. Like, from there down, it's a crapshoot of who you want to put.
Yeah, because right now it's Georgia, who's been slipping on their hold on one. Michigan, I mean, out of all honesty, Texas probably has the best quote-unquote resume at this point, technically, in the sense of the rankings. But again, how good are the other teams? We still don't even, to a degree, know. Like, is Alabama actually very good? We haven't seen it yet. They've looked better at times, but they've had some real issues. And then, like, Florida State at 5. Well, they beat an LSU team now who has 2 losses and gave up over 700 yards of offense to Ole Miss. You know, is that win looking less impressive?
Well, I mean, you combine that with the fact that they mightily struggled with Boston College. You know, I mean, BC is one of the cellar dwellers of the P5, and, you know, that game came right down to the wire. So, you know, right there's another instance where you look at it and you're like, well, how good actually are they?
Yeah.
Same with, like, last weekend. It's like, yeah, Clemson may not be the powerhouse it was, but they're not the same team anymore. Like, you know, Florida State still had to take them to overtime in order to win that game.
Honestly, out of the top 6, arguably the only teams that have been the most dominant and impressive overall has been, I would say, and even Texas played around with Wyoming. You know, so even then, it's like, the only one who's actually been the most dominant, like, every game for the most part, has been Penn State. They played around with West Virginia the first week or whatever, a little bit. But they still handled them. And ever since then, it's just been, they've kind of just run through the opponents. But they haven't played anyone very good either, outside of West Virginia, who's a quiet 4-1.
Yeah, McAfee's loving that.
Yeah, I mean, the only other team that I really look at is Michigan. You know, they're yet to allow more than 7 points or score under 30. You know, but then again, you know, we look at their schedule: Eastern Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, and Nebraska. Who, you know, I don't think any of us would say any of those teams are powerhouses by any stretch.
Colorado boat race Nebraska. So,
and then it's wide open.
Yeah, I mean, outside of like 2 to 3 teams in the top 6, outside of that, and then the top like 10 to 12, yeah, I mean, it could be like, you could almost interchange a lot of those teams, and I think a lot of people would have no problems with that at all. At least at this point in the season, especially when no one's gotten into the meat of the schedule. So that's why I don't know why. I'm glad Mark's not in the chat right now, because he'd be throwing a hissy fit that I'm talking about the AP poll. Because he's like, he threw a fit on Sunday night. He literally called me out. He's like, that's it. I'm ending this show. I was like, do it. Give me a night off. Do it, Mark.
I mean, to his credit, the AP is an absolute fucking joke, especially when you go through and you see the breakdown of how everybody votes. There is just every week there is somebody I look at and I'm like, yo, what are you seeing that I'm clearly not seeing?
Tim makes a great point. Tim does make a great point here. About that mighty Trojan. That mighty Trojan schedule.
Not even Michigan is beating Nevada, San Jose, and Stanford. So, yeah, USC's got the cake there. I can't argue that.
Who else has allowed 40-plus points to Colorado? Not us.
Yeah.
I like Ray Dave here. So it is hard to take at least until mid-October. I think you've got to get a couple more conference games in. That's when people will start separating themselves. Especially as we're going to get into it here later, is when we're looking at next is Washington, then Washington State, Utah. Like we're going to start, and Utah has dropped in estimation this season already. I think because I was texting you guys during the Oregon State game, going, is he even going to come back? And now we might be talking he's not at all, which severely.
And with the news we got. And with the news we got today, it's not looking much prettier for Utah. They're just a shamble of a team.
Losing their starting tight end really puts a dent in their offense.
Yeah.
I think Rising's just going to be, yep, sorry, guys. See ya.
It's and I feel bad for, like, because I do watch the Utah football fans, that channel. Those three are great. They're pretty funny, but they're realistic also. Mm-hmm. And they already said it this year, like, it would be so awful to waste this defense and not have an offense. And unfortunately, I think the reality is coming true for the rest of the season.
It sucks.
Unfortunately, it does suck. It sucks bad because that was going to be one of those big, challenging games for us, especially on the road. And now, without Rising or their tight end, and kind of the team maybe going screw it for the year.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Whittingham, he's not going to let that team just give up and quit, and I have a feeling they're going to come out and they're going to play a complete game at some point, probably, surprise some people with an upset win, probably in Utah. Who knows, maybe it'll be against the Ducks in Salt Lake, just based off what we've seen in previous years. But I do feel bad for that fan base as a whole. I hate a lot of the Pac teams. Utah, for whatever reason, is one of those ones I kind of have a soft spot for. So, yeah, it really sucks to see. It sucks for Cam. It sucks for the team as a whole. A lot of those seniors who are playing their last days of football probably for their career. But unfortunately, it's part of the game we play.
Oh, that's it. I mean, because regardless, it's still at Rice Eccles. So defensively, they're gonna give everything they can. But that if they can't put up more than 7 to 10 points on most teams, it's gonna be a long.
Where are you hearing this, David?
I think he means I saw this. And I was gonna pull it up. Relax, Spaz. Relax. No, I think what he's meaning is Hill gray shirt, the medical. For medical reasons, he can because he hasn't played this year. He can say, "I'm not going to play the rest. I'll take a medical. The NCAA can approve it. He'll get an extra year of eligibility." Well, we've also heard that he said he won't, and he would go to the NFL. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he just said, "Screw it. I'm not going to play this year." To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised. Why waste a year of eligibility for literally half of a season? Yeah, David. It's a gray shirt. Yeah.
As long as the NCAA approves the gray shirt, then he'll be fine. If he doesn't, then he probably just says, "Fuck it, I'm going to the NFL."
Yeah, why risk wasting a year of eligibility if he wants to come back for a season that's half over when they maybe already have 2, maybe even 3 losses by the time he comes back? At that point, it's like if they were undefeated, maybe, but even then, he probably wants a whole year to show he can be healthy.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. I feel like this year of all years just being, at least it's the deepest quarterback class, in my opinion, that we've seen in maybe our lifetime. It's a very, very deep quarterback class this year. So I think, if he would decide to try to come out and forego his gray shirt season and go to the NFL. It's a really tough year to do it. Well, see you, Spaz. Nice knowing you.
No, I was like, what is he doing? He was like, oops. He probably was like, I accidentally closed it.
Yeah, but just coming off injury, missing an entire year, you're doing your draft stock absolutely no favors. And we all know he's a very, very talented quarterback. I think he probably does come back for another year if this gray shirt does get approved, which based off what we've seen previously with gray shirts, it will get approved. But I hope he does come back. Honestly, I'd like to see Utah run the Big 12.
Well, that's a good point too, because knowing, does he want to play the Pac-12, or would is he kind of like salivating, going, I get to face the Big 12? Oh yeah,
all those defenses. Yeah,
so.
That man could feast.
Without Texas and Oklahoma also next year. So.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh yeah, Cam's getting 9 years of medical.
I was going to say, are you
I was like
Cam McCormick or Cam Rising here? Like,
every time I see Cam and I hear about him in Miami, I'm like, oh yeah, he's still here. He's still playing college football. Like that man. Yes.
I swear to God, that man's like almost 30 years old at this point. Like,
he's got to be at least 26, 27 now. At least.
What did I see? His freshman year was like, what, 2017 or something like that?
17 or 18, yeah.
Or maybe he was the 2016. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. I love Cam, don't get me wrong, but I don't know how you don't look at that situation and joke around a little bit. He's had some pretty rough injuries in his career to get to this point. With that being said, yeah, it's very rare to see a dude play 13 years of college football.
That would be his 10th year. This is his 9th year right now.
Oh, my God.
Oh, good.
So he's got to be like 27, 28, maybe 26.
Yeah.
He'll be qualifying for Social Security pretty soon.
Dude's going for his damn doctorate at this point.
Oh, man. Yeah, all the shout-out and love to Cam, though. Well, still love him. But oh, man. At some point in time, you just got to call it quits, I think.
Yeah, he's probably just trying to live out his football days at this point. I think he started Herbie's freshman year. There we go. That was 2015
then. No, that was 2016.
He enrolled in January of 2016.
Yeah, that was 2016.
He was an early enrollee.
My boy.
Jeez.
All right, well.
Oh, God.
He's 25. And he's
not even as old as I thought he was. Yeah, I thought he was about 27 probably by now.
Probably 26 now, but still, you're getting up to old man Hartman's age there.
I keep getting older, but they stay the same. Yeah,
except for Cam.
Yeah, no, that man Cam, he's aging. Aging like fine wine.
Stay away from him.
Or Bo Nix, because he's been there for 10 years now playing ball.
Well, it just actually made me remember. You guys, remember Brandon Wheaton? That dude played till he was 28.
28.
I think it was for A&M. And then Colorado State's kicker is 30, like currently today, and he has 2 kids. Yeah, 30. So.
Kickers are a different situation because they come in a lot older because they're usually the Australians that have been playing sports for a few years, and then they come to school. So they're usually like 26, 27. But yeah, Brandon Wheaton was 28 when he was drafted.
I think I remember seeing a story about a 35-year-old kicker or something.
I'm pulling up a story right now. He was the oldest in NCAA history, 55-year-old running back for South Carolina State in 2016. Suited up for one game. Yeah. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that too.
Joe Thomas?
Yeah, just wanted to live out his college football dreams, so they let him suit up for a game.
Which I think is cool. That I get is cool. But yeah, you're talking legitimate full-time kickers that are 30 to 35 years old. It's like, dude. Your backup is like 19 years old. The backup kicker. Everyone off BYU is 30. Well, yes, but that's because they do 2-3-year missions and they have that eligibility. But yeah, they're all most BYU people are at least 24, 25. I think in general.
Unless you're Zach Wilson.
Speaking of BYU, one of my favorite, go to BYU's roster one time whenever you got a chance and just look at some of the names on there. That is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And yeah, a 55-year-old running back. And to put that into context, his son was playing for the Green Bay Packers at the time he was playing for South Carolina State. Granted, it was one game, and I think he got in for 3 plays total the entire game, something like that.
Yeah, they didn't put him in for the whole game. They just gave him a shot to kind of get himself on the field, which I thought was cool. It was pretty cool, but
yeah, that is cool.
I think he said something like, "That was all I could do because I'm so old now," or something like that. Like he got hit like once. He's like, "I'm done."
I don't blame him.
Kicker I'm talking about plays for Virginia right now. He's 34 years old and has like 3 kids.
There we go.
Hopefully my sound's not bad. I lost my headset. It won't work now.
You sound like $1 million, Spaz.
All right.
Basically, you sound the same. I won't make a comment. What does Auburn think about losing Bo Nix right now? I think, well, I'm sure they're kind of going, yeesh, because they have not had good quarterback play since. But at the same point, I don't think he would have had the same success anyways.
Well, do you remember our fan base losing their marbles because we took Bo Nix and we got rid of Robbie Ashford? The fan base was losing their shit. Obviously, well before, Bo Nix was coming out of a terrible Auburn season. But, yeah, I think the trade worked out well for the Ducks. So, I wish Robbie Ashford well in Auburn.
He had a good couple pieces of the game last week against Georgia. Had a nice little touchdown and stuff, but
okay, he's still focusing on baseball primarily, anyways. So
that's a very valid point. He's a hell of an athlete, though. I will give him that.
He is a great athlete. I thought it was kind of funny coming out how we just kind of swapped quarterbacks at that point.
Yeah, I thought that was funny too.
Take Bo, all right.
We'll take the win. We'll take the win on that trade. We will take the win on that trade. Well, let's do this. This is bye week, and we have Husky hate to talk about. Relax, gentlemen. Relax. I know you guys are all literally foaming at the mouth, but we have a couple things to do. So let's just do it. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it because obviously this is just kind of a review. Let's just talk what we thought in the moment, briefly here over each one here quickly. Not the AP. Mark will kill me. So a quick season review a little bit here. Obviously starting with Portland State, which, yes, we know. Portland State. We know. We've never jumped on, we've never run this on the ground like, man, look how amazing we are. It's Portland State. We know. But looking at this game again now in reflection, what do you think more about this game, or any changes in thought of how this game went? Or
yeah, I don't know. What was it? 2 weeks later, Portland State went and scored 90 on their opponent.
that was the Division III school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like 91-7.
They said, thank you. We'll take that and give it back even more.
Yeah, I don't
know. Oregon, eat this.
These type of games are just so hard to really take anything away from. I mean, putting up 81's great. Holding your opponent to a touchdown, phenomenal. Putting up 730 yards of offense, very balanced. 350 yards rushing, damn near. It's which is great. It's just I don't know how to talk about this game just because everyone wants to trash on it. They played an FCS team. With that being said, I would counter with Oregon did everything and more they needed to do against an FCS team. I think it was a nice tune-up, kind of get some guys' feet wet before heading into Tech the following week. But, it was a good week. It was fun to watch as an Oregon fan. Obviously, I love watching an absolute beatdown regardless if it's an FCS team. So, I mean, might be an unpopular opinion, but that's just me. But the game as a whole, it was a good game. It was solid.
Well, and I feel like week one, it's kind of hard to judge, especially a team that you don't necessarily know really too much about or how an offense or a defense is really going to gel together at that point too. So looking back, 81 is nice, 750, yards of offense is amazing, but again, that's an FCS opponent where we did everything and more.
Well, that's it. In all fairness to Portland State, before the game started, before that game happened, Portland State last year was not a good team either. They were like a 4-win team or something like that, a 5-win team. They were not exactly the greatest of like FCS competition either. So that's it. This was definitely a tune-up game. Just get out there.
Yep, get out, no injuries.
Yeah, and Portland State, I mean, they played, just looking at their schedule, it looks like they played Wyoming kind of tough. That was a close game. They had a good game against Cal Poly this year, but yeah, they're not a very good team at all. So, it was a nice moral victory, like I said, get your feet wet, get ready for week 2, but I think that's about all it was. It was a nice dress rehearsal.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a nice tone setter because, one, we didn't know what the offense was going to look like. And even that game, we still didn't really have a good idea after that game because they didn't have to do hardly anything. I mean, really.
All they had to do was show up.
Pretty much. I mean, really, that's about all they had to do. I will say that this was the one game that started, I think, a little bit of the change that we started seeing from here on with the defense. Because after that first or second drive the Portland State had where they went down the field and scored the touchdown, then you saw the defense make an adjustment and shut them down. And now we've seen that a little bit more repetitively as the season's gone on, which is something we didn't see last year.
Yeah, that's a great point. The foreshadowing. I think you hit it right on the head, actually. It really kind of foreshadowed what, at least the adjustments they can make. They obviously didn't have to be drastic at this point, and the room for error was large, and they could still be successful. But you do bring up a valid point that, they made that adjustment, they did what they needed to do, and they locked it down from there on out. So, yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even think about it that way.
I mean, I think we really saw that adjustment too. Outside, obviously, week 2, which we'll get into that. But outside of that, we definitely see those in-game adjustments, especially against Portland State of, all right, this wasn't working, so let's just go here instead and kind of make those in-game adjustments, which you're seeing more and more now.
And, I mean, as rough as it was, that's exactly the point. Speaking of week 2, it was a much more stressful game. Much, much more stressful.
Yeah. See, this is the game for me that kind of gets under my skin in terms of how our fans kind of view this game, especially our fans. Other fan bases are going to talk their shit. That's fine. I have no problem with, people trying to troll. But my thing is,
there's that sneeze, Ben.
That wasn't for me.
Where I was going with that, though, is I don't think people understand how difficult it is to play a game like this on the road. In Jones AT&T Stadium, there have been some very interesting games played there previously. Some games Tech had no business playing in. It's a tough place to play. It's a tough environment. And, the thing I really took away from that was the adversity and the adjustment from that game in particular. I think this game, it was vital that we had a game like this where Oregon was able to face a little bit of adversity early in the year and, kind of show themselves as well as the rest of the country that they're able to overcome that and make these in-game adjustments. I think it was late in the third quarter, it felt pretty defeating being an Oregon fan. Tech was driving at will. We couldn't really move the ball to a point, and then it's just, I think it was the final drive of the third quarter, something just kind of clicked. The defense really dug their heels in. Bo and the offense obviously went to work. The play I'm thinking of, it was like a 3rd and 11, and Bo scrambled off to the right there and kind of kept himself up balance and scrambled for the first down. And it seemed like that very moment right there was the one that really swung that momentum. But in the long term, it's important you have games like these that you go in there and, you overcome a little bit of adversity. Because if the first time this team is seeing adversity and trying to overcome it is against a number 7 Washington team on the road, not saying it can't be done, but it's a very, very, very difficult situation to do. So, I'm grateful for this Tech game right here. And to be honest, this is my favorite game of the year so far. I'm happy with it. I think this is the one where they really showed their grit as a whole. Offense, defense, special teams was good. It was a good game.
And I'll definitely agree there. I feel like having a game like this early on rather than just a game of, okay, we're going to run over them like, some people thought we would just because it's Tech, is definitely really good because it also allows you to make those adjustments and be able to go into a game like Colorado or Washington or USC and know you're going to be in a dogfight for the game. So you kind of can take that adversity you experienced and just put it into play there and not really give up.
Well, in this one too, because again, we know I was so late to the post game. I had to walk back from the stadium. This was that first game, as you see here in the third quarter. Oregon was scoreless. I mean, Tech came out, took control of the game. This is also Will Stein struggling to find what would work. And that was one of the question marks coming season. What would the offense be? I still don't know what they were running in that game necessarily. It was totally different than what we saw week 1. But he made some adjustments, pulled out some other pages of the playbook and went, okay, let's try this. And it worked. And then exactly, the defense said, hey, fourth quarter, we're going to almost shut them out.
Mm.
And
yeah,
really came into their own.
There's not a lot of games where you're going to lose those 2 middle quarters 20-3 and you're going to walk away with a win. Obviously, don't get me wrong, fourth quarter is important also, as well as, how you get started in that game. But those middle quarters are very important. And Oregon laid a complete egg on offense. It was rough. It was very tough to watch. And it seemed like, Tyler Shuck was running at will on that defense, and it was a very defeating feeling up until the time that those adjustments were able to be had.
Well, and part of it too is you never know what actually clicked at that point. That could have been a play call. That could have been a player really firing up defense, offense. You kind of can maybe key point a couple things on where it might have clicked, but yeah, you never know unless you were on that field.
Like with Raymond here, yes, the pick 6, of course, that silenced the entire student section next to me. They were like, oh my God. What I take away watching the fourth quarter as it's happening and then watching it again and looking back, the pressure stepped up. People stayed in their lanes, did not allow Shuck to run up the middle, and then started applying better pressure. Like the defense finally settled all of a sudden. They were kind of like shaken there for a while. That's just what I take away from it a little bit. But also the secondary started playing better. They were stopping the stupid busts, those really bad PIs.
Oh,
those killed us. Those killed us in that game. I mean, remember, look at this number.
That's exactly what I was looking at.
That number killed us in that game. Absolutely killed us.
Well, the thing is, those penalties, they weren't just like the stupid false starts on first. These things were coming in critical situations. I can think of 2 third-and-long PIs that obviously happened. You know, a third and short holding that took away the first down from Oregon, ended up punting the ball and not scoring that third quarter. It was just some very untimely, uncharacteristic penalties. And, yeah, that was horrendous in that department.
Yeah, definitely. Like those penalties, like were killing us, and that's kind of that stifled our offense a lot during that game. Even with the defense too, you could see that sometimes the defense was gassed at that point, and having those penalties just kind of stifled the defense and allowed them to run up and down the field on us.
Well, and I give Tech full credit. One, they came out with a whole different game plan, I think, than what we expected at Hawaii, or from Wyoming, rather. And they executed, and they did what they wanted to do. And then again, there were minor adjustments, both offense this time though, because there had to be. But the defense also made an adjustment in that fourth quarter. Because as I told you, I was standing there, I was looking down, like the 9 rows, seeing Lupoi just screaming at those guys. And then Hill came over and brought them all together. He was yelling at all of them, going, this is ridiculous. And then all of a sudden, the defense started shutting them down. And I was like, okay. I mean, so accountability, I think, was one of the big things. I think the defense was a little too lax going into that game, maybe more than they should have been.
And as a fan, too, seeing Tosh really get kind of pissed about it, like knowing that the defense is better than that was a lot of fun to see, too.
And I will say, Lanning he talked to the defense here and there, like when they'd go on the field, in the little huddle, he'd be there. But he would actually just let Tosh do most of it. He actually didn't really go talk to the defense. He let Tosh do it. And that's actually a good thing. That means he's trusting Tosh and Hampton to deal with those guys on their own. So he doesn't have to be so fully invested in one side or the other. He can kind of mutually spread himself out amongst the whole team. So I think that's pretty helpful.
I think Antone in the comments here, he made a great point too. He says Tech was in wounded animal mode, and I think that is the best way to describe kind of how they came out into that situation. They obviously came after an emotional loss to Wyoming of all teams on the road. And the last thing they want to do after there was, some preseason hype surrounding Tech a little bit, there was come out 0-2, come out flat against a team on national television, a team that obviously the media, the AP voters, whatever, the respect, they wanted to come out and show that they're a fighting team, and I think that's a great way to put it. They laid everything they had out on the line to win that game. And the fact that it still came short and Oregon was able to overcome that, I think that speaks more about what we have on our side of the field than it does, Tech coming out swinging.
Well, we said there's a huge difference between if they'd gone to the game 1-0 and us 1-0. But that's it. There's a big difference between starting 1-1 or 0-2. Huge difference for a team's, potential going into the season. So Tech gave everything they had. So credit to Tech, but they couldn't quite match up at the end, and that was all that mattered really. They still had a shot at the very end, but
yeah, I mean turnovers is ultimately what I feel swung that game for Oregon. Where's the margin here?
Four turnovers.
Yeah, 4-0. I think Shuck had 3 picks. Ultimately, you're not going to win many games going down 0-4 in the turnover margin.
Well, because really, we didn't have a turnover. We had a turnover on downs on a 4th down, and then Shuck threw it right to our DB the next play to give it right back. That was the start of the downfall of Tech when they gave the ball right back to Oregon on their side of the field. But
yeah, it was a huge momentum switch.
Mm-hmm.
You also got to think too at that point, yeah, we had the 4 turnovers, but they were winning that game pretty much up until that pick six.
Oh yeah, the pick six deflated the place, and even then they still had a Hail Mary chance with a 2-pointer. So, and because even one of these picks was the last pick of the game as time expired.
Oh, yep, you're right.
So you really get rid of one of these picks even.
He really only had that one pick that was thrown directly to the cornerback outside of the pick six and the one at the very end. Other than that, like, Tech was outplaying us all day long.
That's true. Another turnover that's not going to show that was a huge momentum swing was, I think they were on their own, like in Oregon's 40. They had a turnover on downs too. Tyler Shuck tried to sneak it over to the left side.
They were on their own, I think, 33.
Oh, they were on their own side of the field. Oh, yeah, regardless, Brandon Dorless had a big stop, and that was a major momentum swing as well.
Yeah, so that's what I said. Tech was trying to get everything they could. It was back and forth. I think both sides kind of sloppy. Their turnovers, our penalties. It was just kind of back and forth.
Well, I feel like you kind of expect a game like that in, week 1 or 2, maybe even week 3 of having a really sloppy game.
I think so, and like I think Derek said too. I think it was better to get this type of game out of the way now, to see everyone continue to fight, adjustments made, and put in a pressure situation on the road so that it doesn't happen week 7, week 8, week 9, where literally maybe your season's on the line. I think that was it was better it happened this way in this game.
Yeah, and this is the week that brought us our Silver Wings video. Still one of my favorite videos too. So I'm so grateful for this week.
I'm in that video.
Yeah, there we go. You then made a cameo.
Barely. It's like the top of my head with my hat and my sunglasses.
Hey, we're not counting here, all right? You made a cameo. That's all that matters. None of us made a cameo, so that's on you, man. You made that video.
We were all sitting at home because my wife wouldn't let me be there.
I me to walk back from the stadium going, hold on, guys. Plus my signal was crap. My messages wouldn't go through. And I'm like, damn it. Like, resend like 5 times. That's good crap. Well, we got out of the heart attack this week because this was a heart attack week.
Mm-hmm.
We knew the next week would not be a heart attack. We all made projections. We knew it wouldn't be a heart attack.
The Rainbow Warriors.
Oregon just went right back to business against poor old Hawaii.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'm going to point out here is the pass yards given up. I'm going to go just to their starter alone, Brendan Schrager, 131. If we put this into context, this man is still 3 in the nation in pass yards. That's after he had, 131-yard performance, so I'm not going to be out here preaching that this man is, the next godsend. I don't think he's a draftable quarterback, nor do I think the team as a whole is very good at all. That's no disrespect to Hawaii. I'm just kind of calling it like I see it at this point. But, to take a quarterback of the caliber based on the year he's having and to hold him to 131 yards is – I thought that was impressive by the secondary. This is a game right here, as we kind of look at it a little bit. The secondary played phenomenally. I think this is the game where the linebackers really started to click. The defensive pressure really made itself felt in this game. Defensively speaking, granted it's Hawaii, I thought this was a very, very sound game on the defensive side of the ball. And obviously, Oregon's offense did what they did, put up 55 points. That part's great. That's to be expected. But I was very happy with the defense once we got out of this game.
But again, you can look at the penalty yardage there too against a team like Hawaii, 9 for 76. Like, we went down, but against a team like we're playing here next week, that'll kill us all day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the penalties are going to be something that we're going to see pop up here and there, obviously, especially later when we talk about some of the concerns. And I think that is definitely one of the biggest concerns overall. is those penalties, which you wipe off 2 or 3 of those because of just the normal penalties like we talked about. Fine. Well, get rid of the rest of them because it's still like 50 yards in penalties you're giving up. And to a good offensive team, you can't give up half the field.
I still feel like if we did our job and everything, defense kind of kicked it into gear because you had to kind of see it in here too with, yes, this is more the FBS school, but it is Hawaii. Like, probably could have donked them there. But you also saw more in-game adjustments here too from the defense and the offense, really. From both sides of the ball, you've got to see adjustments.
They went Maui strong and softened up on them after the first half.
Yeah, that too. We said they called up the dogs because of the respect for Hawaii, not because of the Maui thing, but just the connection, the pipeline between Hawaii and stuff like that. They called up the dogs on them. So, I mean, even then in the fourth quarter, that's when they allowed the touchdown in the fourth quarter. So that's on our third string plus. So even then, they only allowed 3 points to him total. And like with Shager, I mean, you look at those, or Shager, you look at the passing, 27 completions out of 43. Not the greatest, but not bad. But 27 for 131 yards. Those are little pop bubble screens because that's all they could get. He wasn't chucking it down the field, or anything like that. Those are like 2-3 yard hitch routes, little slants, over the middle, kind of quick passes.
Yeah, it's 4.8 yards per pass.
And this man right here, he was their deep play threat. He's the guy we were kind of keyed in on coming up. I think, coming into this game, he was averaging something like 105 yards and a touchdown per game. That's their deep ball threat right there. And, 8 for 47, what's that, holding them to quick math, 5.5, almost 6 yards a catch. We are seeing a lot of those little screens just trying to get some guys into open space, and it just wasn't there.
Well, if I remember correctly, he didn't even have a catch until the second half anyways.
I believe it.
I think his first catch came with like 8 minutes left in the third quarter on like a little slant route.
Awesome. I'd have to go back and watch to pick on it. This game, by halftime, we were like, we were watching it, but we were like not really super tuned into it at that point. I think most of us were like, okay, exactly what we expected to be.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it felt like when the offense had the ball, they were scoring at will. I mean, where to go? Time of possession down there. We lost the time of possession in a game where we won by 45 points. That tells you one of two things is happening right there. And the thing that was happening in this game is the offense was getting the ball and they were going, scoring, getting rid of it,
And Hawaii was having to take their time to try to figure out what they were going to try to do to move the ball, period. Because Hawaii is the run and shoot. They are more of an up-tempo team. But when you can't move the ball, it's just like Chip Kelly days. Hurry up, until something went wrong. And then they went, okay, hold on for a second. And make an adjustment. And, and that's how Hawaii kind of works. So, but this, Hawaii's Hawaii. We know this. This brings us to the Media Love Fest game of the week. I didn't get to play this clip on Sunday night because USC won. Or they didn't blow out Colorado, so now I get to play it.
All right, here we go. I give you Krabby Land!
I love it. Thank you, Cover 3. I don't know if they made that or if they found out from someone else, but
oh my God, it's looking hilarious.
I don't know who made that, but that is absolute gold. So if they happen to see this, shout out to you. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, I don't know if they did that or I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was on their show and I had to rip it. I was like, oh, that's amazing.
Thank you for that. Like that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But then on to this Colorado game. At this point, well, I'm still technically, potentially one of the best offenses in college football still after the USC game. And
this USC, that defense is suspect as hell, okay? Like,
you didn't play. I didn't play for Tim because I didn't want to hurt his feelings anymore, Mark.
I think he left, Mark. I think he just came in, trolled us, and left.
His ears were burning. That's why he heard something. We said something he didn't like, and he's like, "I'm going in." The wonderful Colorado game.
Hey, Mark, where's ESPN Game Day going next week? Can you give us your predictions?
Kind of feel like this game kind of went how like all four of us kind of expected though. Like,
except for the score overall.
Yeah, none of us gave them 6 points. That's for sure.
No, just look at it. It still kind of blows my mind that Colorado offense was held to under 200 yards. Coming into this game, I think we understood just based off, what the offensive and defensive lines looked like for Colorado, kind of how this was going to play out, once this game really got going. But I don't think any of us really saw us holding Colorado cumulatively to 199 yards. That was amazing. And that, secondary gelled together incredibly well. Linebackers are crashing. The defensive line was in Shadur's face all day long. Northern Illinois and Akron. I got the zips. All right. Big zips guy.
Akron all day, okay? Akron.
Oh, you did hear me. Oh, that's hilarious.
The Fighting Warheads. Speaking of the yardage, remember, 80 to 90 yards of their total came on their one scoring drive.
Late in the fourth quarter. Yeah.
If we had left our first string out the entire game,
they wouldn't have had 150 yards.
Oh, God.
They probably would have had less than 100 yards, to be honest, at that point, like, against first string. But
you're absolutely right, Mark. One of 6 places they've never been.
Yeah. We all predicted Colorado would score over 20 points. All four of us thought that.
All of us were anywhere from 24 to, I think, 30 points. We gave them the respect for their offense. We thought there was receivers. We still weren't sure of the secondary. And then the secondary said, we got shit. We got this.
Yeah, Colorado was just so completely overwhelmed in all 3 phases of the game. Obviously the offense was, especially in that first half, they were just scoring at will. It seemed like they were marching down the field, getting rid of it, marching down the field, getting rid of it. And obviously with the Casey Rogers special teams play, that one kind of, I think that was the moment where it really...
The disrespect.
I can't believe how racist that play call is, to be real honest with you. I cannot believe it.
Why were you reading my mind?
Yeah, dude, I'm going to be honest. I think about Dan Lanning even thinking about calling that play, and I want to spit in his face. It was just so disrespectful. But no, in all honesty, that was the play right there that completely swung the momentum. It was Colorado couldn't do anything on offense. They couldn't move the ball defensively. They weren't stopping nobody. Special teams, they had multiple special teams penalties. Obviously gave up that 3rd and whatever in our own side of the field, our 4th and whatever. It was, I think, until we go down and beat the Fuskies, this is my favorite game of the season just because I was so happy to watch that hype train just crash and burn coming into Eugene after there was no type of respect being had for the Ducks in the national media. One thing I kept preaching was nobody said this was the Oregon game. This was the Colorado game. And everybody, they're going to point out, it was a 21-point spread, but nobody wanted to treat it like that. You know, if it was talked about in that regard, you know, fine, I get it. And to be honest, I think 21 points was like, you know, that's a healthy spread, just given the skill gap in some of these important positions. You know, the defensive line obviously is one that comes to mind for me versus Colorado's offensive line. But there was no respect given to the Ducks. There's nobody on national media that I heard come out and say, yeah, they're going to cover the spread. This game's going to get ugly. Nobody thought that. Nobody wanted to hear that. You know, they wanted to hear this is the Shedeur Saunders show. This is Coach Prime's time. You know, like Dan Lanning. Who's Dan Lanning? You know, I think my favorite comment after that game was, who's Dan Lemming? You know, and I quote Shady McCoy on FS1. Who's Dan Lemming? That shit pisses me off, man. It was like, that just showed there was no respect being had. So I was so happy to see this being an absolute bloodbath on the field. This made my heart full.
Oh, yeah.
We love the fake punt too, Mark. And we also love the fact that you had to run it in on a 10-player team and barely get it across the goal line to win a game.
Okay. I do not sanction that type of disrespect against Mark and his Buckeyes. Otherwise, he will shut this show down. This is when he'll actually cancel it. He'll pull the plug on this thing right now. I want you to get in here, Sean, but that's it. What Mark said, he's like, I love those types of games. I don't have to watch a single play of the second half. I can do an instant analysis still. And that was it. And I told you guys when I was in Savannah, they turned the game off in the restaurant I was in. They turned the game off to UCLA, because everyone's like, they don't need to watch this. This is boring. So flip to something else. No one wanted to watch it after the first half. They're like, there's no point.
Like, one thing that surprised me, probably, even though it came on, you know, that scoring drive, was Xavier Weaver still having 75 yards on 9 receptions. Like, trying to shut him down. But it was like, that's still their best receiver outside of Travis Hunter. So if it just still have 75 yards, it's still kind of a little surprising there. Granted, that probably most of it all came on that last drive where they did score.
He's baiting me, Ben. He's over here baiting me.
Stop letting Mark bait you. Do not let Mark
dirty.
bait you.
Listen,
I haven't heard
Mark-
Ben say
Mark-
anything
Mark-
about these games.
Come on.
Man, it's living in the comments.
All you need to do is go like this. Remember Oregon at Ohio State 2021, Mark.
No, and we don't need to talk about any other Oregon-Ohio State games. We're just going to leave it at that one.
Ever again, just that. And run left. Just run left. Spaz started it. Yes, Spaz starts a lot of stuff. That's why I try to stay very neutral. And Spaz is the one who tries to rile everyone up all the time.
Spaz is the one that gets the commenters going.
Hey,
He's
man.
here for the engagement.
But yes, this game.
I'm here for the clicks, baby.
This game, we were all surprised by the score, and of course the yardage. That's easy. Again, we see this ugly number, which I think we all agree was mostly in the second half, with like the second, third stringers, even maybe a little bit of fourth mixed in there. A lot of that was in the second half, but there was the first drive that was going so well, and they had 2 penalties that backed them up twice and really killed that first drive until we still scored a touchdown, but really slowed down the tempo that Oregon was working with. So again, unforced errors. The holding on Franklin, I believe it was, and I think another false start on Connerly, if I'm correct. I might be mistaken on the Connerly false start, but again, 9 for 80. You don't want to see that number that high.
No. And the only other number that I look on here, and I don't like to see, is that third down efficiency. You know, granted, some of this definitely.
I'm writing these numbers down because we're going to be talking about that. I'm bringing it back up, so I'm actually writing these down game by game as we go with those. Because
Oh yeah, 3 for 10. Yeah, that third down efficiency isn't great.
All right, Mark. Get out. I can't boot the owner of the channel, so if I could, I would.
Is he just trying to hurt our feelings?
He's just trolling. He's just trolling bad tonight. Mark, don't you have something better to do?
I still see 12 gauge and Zeke Elliott running down the field in my head at night. So, I don't really care to talk about it. I'm just moving forward, man. I just want to talk about Colorado. That's all.
I don't know. Stop it, Staz.
Yeah, no shit.
You can go back to the turnovers there too, though. Like you were saying earlier, is usually you see a team that doesn't have a turnover. Usually they win that game. Colorado didn't have a turnover, and we still blew them out the water.
They were close to about 3. There was the one, Kyrie Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was Hill almost had one. They just couldn't reel them in. And that's also good. The first one with Kyrie, that was good by Weaver to kind of help kind of swipe it out there.
Mm-hmm.
But then Hill dropped it on the sideline.
I think Tysheem Johnson almost also had a near pick too.
Yeah, I was like, I think there was another one. But the pick by Nix, and he'll be the first one to say it, and I'm sure he probably did. He probably just said it was a bad throw that he made. Because actually, Johnson was wide open. And Nix like underthrew it for some reason. I don't know if he didn't expect the defender to be there or he just underthrew it for some reason, but that was just a good play up by the defense.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen. If we had a quarterback who went the whole year without having an errant throw, the dude's a consensus number 1 and he's going to win the Heisman Trophy that year guaranteed. I fully expect those plays to happen in the college setting at some point. No, we don't like to see it. And, Bo is obviously a quarterback who is able to limit those mistakes. But, yeah, it is what it is. If he had to throw a pick right now, I'm glad it came in this game. Dave. No, don't start this. I don't want to start this.
Well, Mark and him can have it out in the chat.
I mean, Dave's probably right. We probably whooped the hell out of Ohio State.
Here we go.
No, that's not me, Mark. I'm nice over here. I stay neutral.
I don't want the smoke.
But that's it. I have to say I think that's what we played the video of Colorado walking in, talking crap to all the players and the coaches, breaking the O. Then that was the other part. The media just Colorado. Not going. They're walking into Oregon. Because before the season started, I didn't think Colorado would be 3-0, but I was like, going to Oregon, ooh, they're not going to like it. But I gave them more respect after going 3-0. It was like, oh, okay. But the media just still Colorado. And that's what pissed Dan Lanning off. He's like, this is our house. And the media doesn't seem to care.
Right, and that's the thing. I know we kind of went in depth in talking about his pregame speech and some of the things that were said that the national media liked to drag along for days on end after this game. Obviously a lot of people had a problem with that pregame speech, but
the Cinderella story is over, man. Right? They're fighting for clicks. We're fighting for wins. There's a difference, right? There's a difference. Right? This game ain't going to be played in Hollywood. It's going to be played on the grass. Right? It's going to be played on the grass.
That one?
You got it. That's the one. But I'm going to reiterate it one more time just in case there's people in here who weren't able to hear that. I think his pregame speech had absolutely zero to do with Deion nor Colorado. I mean, the stomping on the O, when he talks about what that means to him, he's like, it means a hell of something to me. Not what I'm talking about. But I think a lot of that had to do with just how the media was running with this Colorado hype train. He understood what the media was doing. He knows what wanted to play out there and who was getting the respect and who wasn't. And then, in terms of this game's not played in Hollywood, that's another one that people had a lot of problems with. But I don't think that has anything to do with Deion. I don't think that's saying Deion's a Hollywood figure and that's all he is. I think Dan understands Deion is a hell of a coach and what he's doing at Colorado is incredible. I'll be the first to admit that. I'm not a CU fan by any stretch, but he's doing something great down there. What I think he is saying, though, is week in and week out, they're bringing in Kevin Hart, The Rock, Lil Wayne's walking him out the tunnel, X, Y, and Z. You have a laundry list of celebrities who are on the sidelines. And Oregon walked out with T.O. and Warren Sapp, who, granted, he might be part of the staff in the coming year, reportedly. But still, I think it had more to do with that. And I think Dan Lanning's just trying to preach to his guys, that doesn't matter. That's outside noise. Like he said, the game's played on the field. right? What happens once they hit those lines, that's what's important. Not who's on the sidelines, not who's hyping them up before the game, not who's on college game day saying, oh, whoop-de-whoop, Colorado's going to come out and do this, and Shedeur Saunders is the second coming of Jesus. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's all about what happens between those whistles, and I think that was more his point than anything else. So.
Yeah, that's all it was. It was about, when he just says Hollywood, just means like, it doesn't matter who you have on the sideline, what celebrity wants to think you're the shit, and stand on the sideline, cheer you on, or give you props. That doesn't matter because they're not playing on the field. We are. And people took a shot at that, as if it was something to get beyond. It's like, no.
Yeah, I'm done, Mark.
Mark got bored. I think Mark left. He got bored with you a long time ago.
Yeah.
But, man, come back and you guys are still in Colorado. How many weeks later? Come on.
Says the one who wanted to talk all this shit afterwards.
Yeah, it's
over and done.
Well, so to be fair, so is Portland State, Texas Tech, and Hawaii, but we just got to get off those guys too. So welcome to the review show, Spaz.
It's the bye week.
I didn't choose the bye week. I don't like the bye week. I hate the bye week, but
The
here
bye
we
week
are.
chose us.
David, stop.
I know. I'm like, that's why I'm leaving it alone. Let them just do their thing in the chat. If Mark wants to text me angrily later or whatever,
You're going to get our show pulled, David. Stop.
No, seriously, he's starting to hurt my feelings a little bit. So if we can just leave him alone, let the man do his thing.
What
I just kind of
don't know. You ain't got any, Derek.
I mean, I'm kind of numb at this point, man. It's
Yeah.
None of us would be here right now without Mark. So please, folks, stop picking on Mark because you'll pull the plug on all of us.
Well, we can talk. We'll bring it back to Colorado a little bit too, because now after this next game, now we have comparisons within the Pac-12 too, which I think that's what we were waiting on. It's kind of comparison factors amongst the top teams. USC, So following Colorado, I think it didn't start out well, and this is kind of what we expected. I said this feels like that Cal game last year after UCLA. It's going to start out very sluggish, but credit Stanford. They came out with a game plan, and they executed very well in the first quarter.
yeah,
Very scarily.
Yeah, I think, one thing I was talking to some other people, I think Stanford kind of understood that there is a massive talent gap here, right? I mean, I don't think there's any position group in which favors Stanford over Oregon, and I think they understand this. They understand Oregon's coming off an emotional win, and I think they tried to play into that a little bit, and I think that had a lot to do with that first and second drive by Stanford. They really drew out that clock, right? So I think we got to the second quarter, and Oregon had ran, 6 plays to that point, 6 offensive plays, not counting the punts. They did their thing. They went out there and they controlled the tempo, kept Bo Nix and the offense off the field for the most part, and when they were on the field, the defense did a good job shutting them down. With that being said, I think we all understood that as this game kind of progressed, we knew Stanford wasn't going to be able to sustain that. It's just I credit them more than I diss Oregon in that first quarter. Stanford came out and played phenomenally. They executed their game plan phenomenally for one quarter. After that, I think, if you watched the little cinematic recap this week that was released today, we kind of got to see into the sidelines a little bit and Dan talking to the players and stuff, and they knew, he mentioned it multiple times that they needed to bring their own juice. Like last week, the media provided that hype. There's a national audience there. The stadium was absolutely rocking. Then you get to the farm to play the Nerds, and it was quiet. There were more Duck fans there than Stanford fans, but that doesn't mean the stadium was loud. This was a perfect recipe for a slow start to a game, which is, it just happened to be what happened. But I can't complain about the following 3 quarters, and I'm never going to complain about a 43-6 win. So, people can say what they want about the slow start. I'm very pleased with this game.
Well, one thing I find, actually looking this up now, kind of funny is you look at Stanford's time of possession at 35-36. our time of possession against Colorado is 35:06 the week before. So you're taking a whole 30 seconds off, and it's pretty much the same time of possession between both games. You're just swapping sides at that point.
Well, the 42-6 was an interesting score to have the same score 2 weeks in a row. That was kind of interesting. And I mean, at Stanford, we knew this one. All of us picked very low points for Stanford. I think the highest point total I think picked was 13 points, maybe 17 even, but figured in garbage time. But
Sure.
even I said Stanford 7. They scored 6. You know, I do think this is another game where you saw the defense do adjustments. Stanford did what they wanted to that first quarter, and then Lupoy was like, "All right, that's enough of that." And he started bringing some blitzes. And that really took Stanford out of that rhythm that they were building when it came to, you know, running their quarterback and their short yardage rushes. I think that's the type of thing. We're going back to those adjustments that we saw. And granted, Stanford, again, they did what they want to do, their game plan, but then the boys like, no. Done with this. Or maybe Lanning said, hey, turn up the heat a little bit. You know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
You know, they struggled in that first quarter. You know, Lamson, he is an athletic quarterback, and Oregon did struggle kind of containing him in that first quarter. But like I said, they made phenomenal adjustments. You know, Bryce Betcher, Jamal Hill, they both, I can think of some nice tackles for loss they had in this game. They really made the proper adjustments. And after that, you know, I mean, he was pretty successful running the ball in the first quarter and ended up with 22 carries for 32 yards. You know, so the man's not even averaging 2 yards a carry when all said and done, just based on how the rest of the game went. But that's a phenomenal point. The adjustments made in this game were chef's kiss.
Spaz, you're being awfully quiet. Will you stop trolling Mark on Twitter?
I'm not. I'm doing nothing.
So do I have any angry texts from Mark yet? No, I don't. Okay, good.
Yeah, Spaz, let's hear what you got to say about this game, Spaz. The old Stanford game.
It was a rough first quarter, but after that, you know, we just kind of like we've kind of said for the last couple of weeks is like, you know, these coaches and this coaching staff is completely different from what I think most of us are used to over the last 10 years or so. They make the adjustments when needed. They don't screw around. It's like, okay, obviously this isn't working. We're going from plan A to plan C or whatever plan it may be, but it's not the plan they originally came out with, and they change it up, and it's proven effective each week. And last week was no different. It gets different, and this coaching staff makes the right changes at the right time and is not afraid to make a crazy call as against Colorado.
I mean, and I'll give credit to the coaching staffs over the last 10 years for a lot of times making the necessary adjustments, whether at least offensively or defensively. The one year that they never made any adjustments. One, we know 2015 defense was god awful. 2016 got even worse, and the offense was terrible. Willie Taggart run up the score in the first half, no adjustments in the second half, and let the other team score like 35 points to come within 7. We'd still win a bunch of them, but zero adjustments. Like, you watch the first half and just go, I'll just turn it off and check the score later because I don't want to deal with this. But yeah, so far this year.
Was that Willie Taggart's team that got beat by Kansas State in the Alamo Bowl, I think it was?
No, that was TCU, and that was Mark Helfrich.
Oh, God. All right.
That was after Vernon Adams went out with a concussion.
I mean, in terms of the coaching adjustments, so some of these guys you mentioned, obviously the one that we can really compare it to just because it's the most recent is the Mario regime. But it seemed like, I mean, I don't know if you guys agree or not, but it seemed like when we were watching this Mario team and say they hit some adversity, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, we saw some times where they couldn't move the ball. It felt like they were just bashing their head against the wall, trying to do the same stuff over and over and over again with no results. You know, that I think it's an absolute breath of fresh air to see that there are adjustments being made and they're not afraid to make those adjustments. Like kind of Spaz mentioned earlier, you know, they understand that if you're going to win these games, you need to make these adjustments. And Mario's regime did not do that. You know, if they had a game plan, they wanted to keep that game plan and that's all they wanted to do. So, I mean, I couldn't be any more pleased with the adjustments that are made.
Yeah, Mario was sticking to the game plan no matter what.
Oh, Willie. Slick Willie.
Willie was more like Willy Wonka right there. Damn.
Yeah, we were like Florida State still paying him too, I believe. So.
You know, I actually got to watch Willie again after he left Oregon in person. I watched a Florida Atlantic came to Wisconsin one year, and I got to see Willie get his ass kicked in person. That made my heart happy.
Yeah, I bet. Did you ask him if he was missing Oregon after that?
No, he got out of there real quick. Willie's not the type of dude to fuck around. He got in and he got out. His team was out of. He wasn't about shaking hands. He was gone.
Get embarrassed like that? Of course you are.
Yeah, he should be embarrassed. In
all fairness, there was like with Cristobal's first year, you know, Herbert got hurt in both those seasons. So those were those few games that really went south because the backup came in. So kind of in fairness, he was like, I don't trust the backup quarterback to do anything. So in all fairness, I will give Willie that, but I'm glad he left. I was very glad he left without not doing any adjustments, period. And I couldn't watch it.
To go drying down Florida State.
Well, Stanford, I think we all figured Stanford was not going to be much of a challenge. We wondered about the Stanford curse, the hangover. Not the case outside the first quarter, maybe, which I give more credit to Stanford, I think, than anything. Just because they were like, hey, you know, here comes Oregon.
Yeah, they executed it. That's all it is.
Don't look, Mark. I'm showing the AP. His ears are burning.
Mark went to bed.
Well, before we get into the little hate week stuff, so I'm going to pull this down before Mark sees anything. He's going to come in like a bitch. Give me something, each one of you, and I have two things written down. We already talked about one of them, so if it is your main one, by all means use it, because if I do the math correctly here, which I'm probably not going to, 36, 46. So third downs, out of 55 third downs attempts, we have 13, 19, 22, 28. 28 out of 59 on third downs for the year so far.
Under 50%.
Not very good. Not great. Not terrible, but definitely not great. In a couple of those games, really drug us down. Like we were talking about, 6 of 11, 3 for 7, 3 for 10. Not great. Not great numbers. So give me, each one of you, though, either and start with Sean, then go Spaz or Derek, depending on Spaz is there. Give me an offensive surprise this year, because that was one of our question marks this year. Is like, what was the offense going to be? Who was going to be? We knew like the top 2 or 3 guys maybe, but like, what's kind of been the surprises so far with all the games we just went over?
The offensive surprise of the year so far. I think mine would surely be the pass distribution. So, you know, it's based on looking at, you know, completions per receiver. The wealth is spread out pretty ridiculously. You know, as we'd expect, Troy's number one to take the most targets. But beyond that, between Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden, you know, the tight ends, T. Ferg, obviously the running backs, Bucky's getting his fair share of touches out the backfield. Bo distributes the ball very equally among his weapons, and I think that kind of surprised me a little bit. I really expected it to be a top-heavy offense in the passing game in terms of, you know, Troy kind of being a clear number one. I thought there was going to be a clear number two, who, in my opinion, I thought it was going to be Trayshawn Holden. I think we see he's a clear number 3 to 4 at this point. But just the distribution of who Bo likes to get the ball to, I think that's probably my biggest offensive surprise. I think, you know, the run game, it is what we expected. Bucky's doing his thing. You know, when Noah is healthy, Noah's doing his thing. Jordan James has been phenomenal, but it's to be expected. We know the Ducks have a phenomenal run game. But yeah, I mean, just the sheer offensive depth in terms of who's able to catch the ball, I think is my biggest surprise to this point so far.
I think mine's got to be Jordan James, and just the way he's came in, and I don't think people expected him to do a lot this year, but he's definitely came in and gave us some sparks when needed, and is able to control the ball and protect it and get up and down the field. And when he gets out on the edge, he's pretty quick.
Yeah, he's great.
My surprise has got to be Jordan James. Didn't expect him to basically be the number 2 back right now, really.
Especially with Noah, now he's got a much bigger piece of the pie that he's responsible for. And I mean, just based off Stanford, the dude, he looks like he could be an RB1. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously Bucky's that dude right now, which is fair enough. Bucky deserves all the credit, but Jordan James no slouch. You know, he's no backup running back by any stretch.
No.
I'd say for me, it's really the offensive line, because we went from an offensive line last year that, it was like 2 or 3 years they've been together.
Yeah.
To an offensive line where it's basically brand new outside of Austin Powers Jackson. You know, everybody's pretty much brand new on that offensive line. So to see that we're still getting those type of holes, to see there's still those running lanes, that Bo has barely been sacked this year, especially with that offensive line, is probably my biggest surprise.
Yeah, to be honest, that's one I didn't even think about off the top of my head. But yeah, just how brand new they are. You know, JPJ, obviously starting at center. The dude's having a fucking phenomenal year, and Josh Connerly stepping into a starting role for the real first time in his career. But outside of that, you know, Johnny Cornelius, the transfer from Rhode Island, the FCS transfer, that dude's playing phenomenally. The offensive line as a whole seems to be gelling. And to be honest, if I could change my answer right now, I would change it to Sean's answer. That's a phenomenal point.
You can't.
I locked it in. I already submitted it. I locked it in. It is what it is.
But that is a point. One, what do they always say about O-lines? If you don't know their names, they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
If you know their name, there's problems, like penalties or something like that. And that's the only, because actually Sean had the same as me. I've actually been really surprised by, one, Will Stein so far, the adjustments he made, but in player-wise, it's the O-line. I had basically the same answer written down here. Was they've held up really well. I mean, way better than I thought they would, because even 3 sacks?
Something like that.
Tally.
Something like that,
One to 2 of those could probably be pulled off because Nix was trying to run up the middle and just kind of got caught. You know, so, but 3 sacks, that's still not bad for a whole reconstructed O-line. Not bad at all.
No.
Now the fun part is, though, offensive concerns at this point. And I'm going to start, though, quickly, because it's also the O-line. It's actually still the O-line is a little bit of a concern because we don't know. They haven't gone against anyone yet. But if it's not the O-line, we talk about third down conversions. It's, for me, though, it's still the deep shots are getting missed. Against Stanford, there was the deep shot that Nix threw and just overthrew it. Bryant, I believe it was. Now, whether he slowed down or not, there's some still sort of something's not connecting between Nix and his receivers or the timing all around. Something's not connecting still on some of these deep shots. And again, those can swing a game one way or the other very quickly. So I don't know what that is, but those are my only kind of big concerns at this moment, I guess.
I'd definitely say, yeah, kind of the same, like the deep shots. Like, Bo can definitely make them, and there's been a few where, Tez or Troy has had that opportunity to haul in those deep balls, but they've either been misplaced or, too far in front of the receiver. So maybe there's some miscommunications there, but he's also made some really good long throws as well.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely the O-line too there as well is a concern, just because of the fact, like you're saying, we haven't really played anybody, but we will get tested, come next weekend. That D-line is big, but so is our offensive line. So we'll see kind of how those holes are and see how that pass protection kind of holds up come next week too, and see maybe those adjustments that Stein makes, because this is the first big game we've had to play all year.
Fair. That's very fair. I think.
Hey, should we milk the clock, guys?
No, we're not doing the John Smith thing on the sideline. That was so weird. I think I texted you. Didn't I text you and I said, did he just milk himself?
You did.
Yeah.
And then he made an apology about it, going, I won't do that again on Twitter or online after the game. I was like, so weird. So weird.
Yeah.
He was like trying to get through to his guys, and it was like they weren't listening. So he's like, well, maybe they'll get this.
It made a lot of sense. I saw his interview after the same one where he apologized, and he's like, I'm not going to apologize he's like, I needed to get the signals into my guys, and he's like, I needed to make sure they understood what I wanted. I mean, to be fair, he's not thinking about the media at that point. What is concern number one is getting those dudes to understand what he's saying, and as bizarre as milking it was, he got the message across. So I can't really fault the dude.
Finally figured it out what he was saying. Yeah. Oh, we get it now.
In terms of offensive concern, I don't wanted to bring up. I got the stats up here right quick, Ben. So Oregon, they're 50.9% on third down this year, which we're thinking it's not that great. If you had to guess right now, out of 127, where would you think we would rank nationally with that?
Probably like top 20.
90 something.
They're top 20. They are number 17 in the country on third down with a 50.9%. Successful.
When you say 50.9, I'm like, that's actually not bad at all, actually, because most teams, when you get to like 47 to 49%, that's where like 70 teams are stacked.
Yeah, it's a very average mark.
It's such a small margin. So I was like, actually above 50%, that's actually not that bad.
No, so I mean, it's it's all right. It's decent. I think my biggest concern though is, as a whole, I'm not going to pick out one unit specifically. I think what we saw in the Texas Tech game and what we saw in the first quarter of the Stanford game is we saw stagnant offense. They are susceptible to those stagnant moments. They had 2 quarters against Tech where the offense was not jiving. They weren't moving the ball with any type of consistency. I mean, granted, the penalties had a lot to do with that in the Tech game especially. But I think it is kind of concerning that they are susceptible to having those quarters where just nothing is going right on the offensive side of the ball, because we're going to get to games, obviously, where if that happens in the wrong time, you're absolutely destined for an L. So the fact that those kind of happened, even granted if it is against Texas Tech for 20 minutes and it's against Stanford for 2 drives, it's the fact of the matter that they couldn't move the ball at all. That really concerned me with all those weapons. And I think that would kind of be my biggest concern at this point. I don't think it's a major concern right now just because it's not very frequent, but we've seen it happen in multiple games now. So
Yeah, definitely the offensive line is still a little bit of an issue. And that's what we're going to have to keep our eyes on next week, is to see how our offensive line adjusts to their big bruising defensive backs and stuff. Hopefully we can keep Bo upright and not have a repeat of last year.
Yeah, 100%. We need Bo at full strength, as we saw from last year's bullshit game in Eugene.
At least this time around, it's earlier in the season than like third to last game.
Yeah.
Then they obviously have not been running him on purpose there near as much as he was last year. So he's not putting near the strain on his ankles and stuff that he was last season. So I think that's, and we're still putting up good points. So we don't need him to run at this moment, but he will if he needs to, of course. And we've seen quarterback draws, so they're in the package, just not as frequent.
100%.
What about the defensive surprises? You could just say a player, you could say a group, like the surprises. Because we came into the season with a lot of question marks on the defense, especially.
Bryce Betcher. And Kyrie Jackson, I didn't think he would be that quick of a step up on safety, but he's proven to be a solid safety.
I take credit. I said Jackson was my surprise standout from I think week 1 or 2. I take credit for that.
I'd just say the cornerback group as a whole, like we've had kind of those stupid defensive PI penalties, but over the last couple of weeks, they've really kind of stepped it up at this point and have kind of gotten rid of those stupid little penalties, and they're looking back at the ball and they're not letting the ball come to them, and then now let's knock it out and here's a PI. So that cornerback group is definitely a big surprise, because it was a question all of us had coming in of how is that gonna kind of go together and kind of gel, and we're seeing it now.
I think for me, there's only two possible answers here. One of them would be the defensive line. My only reason for that is the defensive line is doing what we would expect them to do. We brought in Jordan Birch for a reason. He's doing what we brought him in to do. We know known all along what Brandon Dorless brings to the table. He's bringing to the table. Taki Tiamani, dude's getting in the backfield. There's tons of dudes. There we go, Raymond. Evan Williams is having a great day. The only reason I'm not going to say Evan Williams, he was an All-Pro or All Mountain West player last year. We knew what he brought to the table. And, honestly, my answer would also be Kyrie Jackson, just because, at Alabama, he didn't really get his fair shakes. Prior to that, he had, some personal issues at his JUCO that led to him being dismissed from the team. So he's never really gotten a full chance to play, and he's showing phenomenally. The person I'm going to say, though, is somebody we don't get to talk about because we don't hear about him very often because they're not throwing his way, is Jaleel Florence. J-Flo has been absolutely phenomenal on the other side of Kyrie Jackson. A lot of fans are going to say, well, we don't hear, but he's not getting interceptions. He doesn't have a lot of pass breakups. Doesn't even have a lot of tackles, which, if you ask me as a starting quarterback, that is phenomenal, right? They're not targeting him for a reason. The man has been absolutely locked down in coverage, which, we knew he was a special player. He was a high recruit coming out of high school. We knew what he could have been eventually, and I think he's blossoming into that and more this year. I think he's taking a massive step forward this year, and that kind of goes. That's pays major dividends in the secondary, which is something, like you said, we've had concerns about coming into this year, just because our secondary play has been shaky at best for the last 8 years.
Well, and everyone says, hey, if every corner, all DBs, safety, whatever, everyone has a moment where they get burnt. They have. Look last year. No one threw at Gonzalez, but he still got burnt here and there. And then he got picked in the first round as one of the best corners. So the fact that no one throws at you just says that they don't want to test you.
Yeah,
Kind of all it means is like they're literally like, go against the other guy. And now Jackson is showing, don't try me.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it makes me, obviously, we'll get into Washington in just a little bit more here, but it makes me feel better going into that game, knowing that we have two cornerbacks who I can look at and say, yeah, I trust those guys right now. And that's something we haven't had the fortune of having as Oregon fans in a lot of the years. We've had some good cornerbacks in our time, but we've never had really, unless somebody can correct me real quick, I can't think of two of them that I've trusted at the same time on our defense. It's been a while. Maybe back to the Ifo Ekpe-Olumu days.
Yeah.
Maybe, it's, I don't know. I mean, even then. But yeah, I would say he's probably my biggest surprise this year. Just I didn't see it coming. He's not a dude I was really thinking about before the season. Obviously, transfers made a lot of noise coming in, but yeah, he's been great.
I have this as its own topic, but I'm just going to we can just kind of shortchange this. One of the position groups I'm still a little, like as a whole, position groups, special teams is still a little shaky to me. Like we've had a punt blocked. I know Lewis just missed a field goal this last week, the first one of the season. I'm not too worried about his field goal kicking. But punt blocks, those are bad. You can't be having punts blocked. And, Tech got one. And that really helped Tech gain some momentum late in the game. And so I'm a little shaky still on that. Hopefully they're shoring that up, but
yeah, I mean, special teams is definitely still a little bit of a concern, even with, Camden's leg. He's had 2 kicks out of bounds. Obviously, it's not that big of a deal, but that's still a penalty. It's still going to give a team yards at that point. He obviously hasn't really missed a field goal. He just missed that first one. But even so, that protection up front for a punter is not the greatest at this point, and definitely needs to be addressed because as we get into teams like Washington, Utah, USC, Oregon State, Washington State, like there may be times where they want to come after that ball, and we're getting them blocked.
did Lanning give any comment, or did anyone ask? I didn't watch the post game after the Stanford game. Did he give any reason for the 2 kickoff out of bounds? That just seemed bizarre. 1 maybe, but 2, I was like, that's kind of weird. I guess it was the direction he was kicking it, and he just overshot it. I guess.
I didn't see nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I typically sit and watch, the interviews and the post-game stuff with Coach when he comes on, but I really don't think that got addressed at all. And it was kind of bizarre just because that's something we don't normally see. And then to see it back-to-back kickoffs, I mean, to be honest, we said it's not a big deal, which, I mean, in that context, it really wasn't. But if it happens again, it can very well become a big deal very quickly. When you're giving that team the ball on the 40-yard line to start just for shits and gigs, just because it's...
Is it the 40 or 35? I mean, regardless, though, instead of stopping it maybe at the 20, you're giving them 15 extra yards, or at least 10 compared to a kickback. I mean, the point is... Or a touchback. So, the point is 3 yards. You don't need to be giving up to some of these teams. Like Levi saying, double air raid coming. Washington and Wazoo, yeah. Or then USC, you don't need to give them 10 free yards.
No, you don't. We don't need any free yards, especially on the special teams. And that's it's an instant. Even if it's minor, it's an instant little momentum swing for that offense. When they realize they have less yardage to go, we're giving it to them too. It is a little concerning. I'm hoping, obviously that gets shored up, and I do trust Camden to bounce back from it. He's been great the last 2 years, the last 3 years, really. He's been phenomenal. So I mean. Everybody has a bad game. I'm going to decide to give him some grace. Everybody can make their own judgment on that, but he's been great. I have no reason to believe he won't bounce back from an off game.
as to Raymond here, I think we talked about this.
Mhm.
Jackson's injury was nothing serious, it looked like, because he was ready to go, but they held him out, I think. Is that what we discussed last week?
Yeah, and what it sounds like, just based off what I'm seeing on social media from some of the team reporters and such, it kind of sounds like they're going to hold him out here for a little bit in practice. It sounds like it's more precautionary than anything. So when he did go out, I'm not sure, Raymond, if you were here Saturday, but kind of the breakdown of what happened in the timeline here. He went out with injury. He went to the bike. He started to head back to the locker room. He came back on the sideline to try to get back in the game, got on the bike again, and then ended up going back to the locker room and calling it a day. But what it sounds like, it was a little more precautionary than anything. Obviously Dan doesn't like to speak on injuries directly. He's not going to come out and say, he's got a bone bruise in his knee or, a partially torn, whatever. That's not going to happen. But what it sounds like, and speculation just around people who are hanging around the team, it sounds like it's a pretty minor injury that they're being a little more cautious with than not, just based off what they're going to be facing come, not this weekend, but the following weekend.
Which was a starting cornerback against Stanford. Pull him out before a bye week. Let him rest, whatever. Especially for something minor, like whatever.
And it's important to get some of these other guys reps too. Like Nico Reed ended up sticking up and taking quite a bit of snaps in the Stanford game, and he had a penalty that wasn't very a questionable penalty. We'll leave it at that. But overall, he played well. It's important these guys get their feet wet too. There's going to come a day where the nickel defense is going to pay dividends for Oregon. We're going to see Nico Reed on the field a little bit more. So I think it was equally about protecting Kyrie as it is kind of getting some of these other guys some meaningful reps as well.
And that's it. We have depth, so getting them into the actual gameplay, I think, is important. And they held up well. Obviously, Stanford didn't do anything. I know. Relax, people. The moment is about to be upon us. I just need to touch upon a couple things here. I think Gridiron Chick has left, but she's 40 tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday tomorrow!
It could be today now, depending on where she is. I'm not sure where she is. So happy birthday! It took a little while to get to that chat. I started that, and then we kind of went off on a tangent there for a while. And Ray to Dave gave a happy birthday, but yeah, it's happy birthday, Greater Energy. LFG wanted to know this, and I think we talked about this briefly. We don't have no idea. I'm assuming a fund directly related to Oregon. Basically, like here's your annual allowance fund of some sort.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got it set up with his kids and everybody to, they're going to take over.
Well, I think he's going to take his kids out of this. I think he's going to set up a fund on its own, because I don't know if the kids are that invested like he is and Penny. So I think he's going to put like half of his money away and go, here's your annual money or whatever, and divide it up for so many years until it runs out or whatever. Because I don't know if the kids are that invested,
Yeah, just touching on this one a little bit. Twitter is obviously a hotbed of information. Depending on who you follow, there's some people who are pretty connected to the program. Information. Yeah, no, I didn't always say accurate information. There's information out there, so definitely be careful who you're getting your sources from. But some people pretty connected to the program. It sounds like, what's going to happen here. It sounds like it's kind of a self-perpetuating fund that's set up where Oregon, they'll be okay. Uncle Phil's got
it's set aside money completely separate from anything. Just here's your money, interest. Here's your payment every year or whatever. Or as needed funds.
Well, let's hope Uncle Phil lives a long, happy life still. I mean, he's getting up there in years, but let's hope he's around for a long while. But, if when the day comes, just know the program will be okay. They're going to be taken care of. The funds aren't going away.
I did like the Colorado before the Oregon game. They did their own little video where Dion went on the field and Phil Knight was there and gave him a hug. And he's like, and Dion was like, bowing to Phil Knight, like, hey, this is the man right here. And he's like, get over here. And he's like, how you doing? He's like, well, I'm still walking. So he's like, not as young as I used to be. It's like, yeah, no, Phil, you are not.
Yeah, we love Uncle Phil.
Well, all right, we've had enough of this. Because hate we boys. Anton is making a decision here, 43-34.
I always knew Anton knew what the hell he was talking about.
I'll take that score. I would take that score, especially on the road at Washington. But this is where we get in the nitty gritty. Because here she is, boys. All in his glory, October 14th, 2:30 p.m. Central Time, 12:30 Pacific Prime Time. Shut up, Dion. Shut up, Dion. Talking about other things.
42-6.
42.
I would laugh
if that happened, I would be like, dude, we're number one in the country at that point.
Oh,
if that happens, everyone would be like, Oregon's number one. Screw it.
I would be on here talking absolute craziness to everybody who wanted the smoke if that happened.
For real.
That is not going to happen. USC. What was that?
It'll already happen against USC.
I don't think it's going to happen against Washington. And I mean, we know what Penix is. We saw him last year do his magic. He's doing it again this year. Mostly though, it's yardage.
He didn't last week.
They don't run the ball. They cannot run the ball since they're down. They lost their starting running back at the beginning of the season or before the season started. Because you look at Penix, 133 completions to Bo Nix's 131, and he has over basically 550 more yards with one more completion. Because they can't do anything else but throw the ball deep, which is still a hell of an offense. I mean, don't get me wrong, but he still only has one more touchdown and one more pick than Nix. So those two are pretty. The teams are built differently, but I'm not going to give Penix this huge edge.
Well, and last week, too, Penix was without McMillan. McMillan was hurt. So against Arizona, he didn't have his number one target either. So that didn't help him at all. But I definitely won't give him that edge just for the fact of you're playing more of the game than Bo actually has all year.
Well, and again, too, with last week, Washington was like, hey, we're going to a bye week also. Then we have Oregon. And it's in Arizona, which is always giving everyone fits out of the Northwest. I think they just wanted to get to the bye week, too. They're like, let's just do this. Let's get out of here and go on the bye. So I'm not even going to look at that game and talk crap about it like some people are trying to do with Washington. I'm kind of giving them a pass on that one, too. Just like they went on the road. They faced a hungry Arizona team who wants to knock off a top team, and they still got out of there, you know? So I'm not going to.
Well, like we were kind of talking about, Arizona has been UW's kryptonite for whatever reason, you know, over the last couple of years when they have no business competing with Washington. You know, I would compare it to Oregon going down to the desert in Tempe. You know, we've seen multiple games where I'm just happy to get out of there with the win. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to choose to look at that game and say, oh, yeah, you know, we have a clear edge in that game. It's one of those games where you got to be out with a win. You know, I would equate it to like a Texas Tech for us. It's how it unfolded, and they overcame the adversity when they needed to. They got out with the dub, and it is what it is.
Yeah, here's some quick stats. Yards per game and passing yards per game. Washington ranks first at 569 yards per game with 446 yards through the air per game, but yet they're 191st in rushing yards per game at 123.
Did you say 191st?
Yes.
That's not possible.
Well, that's what it says.
Well, your stats are wrong. There's only 135 teams in the FBS.
Yeah, to be fair, man, I'm looking at I am looking at a whole nother app, and I mean, this is also, mind you, it is inclusive of the FCS at this point, but they are.
Well, if it's including the FCS, then yes.
That might be what it is.
If
Yeah,
it's inclusive of the
it
FCS,
is.
okay.
But yeah, this also says 191 on a separate app, so I can confirm that is true. You know, they're not able to rush the ball.
We're sitting here.
So then we can probably assume that they're 135th, dead last in the country at rushing the ball at the FBS level.
No, not necessarily, but
No,
almost. They're in the top. They're in the hundreds range probably, but I mean, 123 yards a game rushing average. That's not great. That's not great.
Not their bread and butter. Obviously, they know what they do well, and they do that thing very, very well.
Whereas Oregon is second in yards per game, 12th in passing yards per game, 17th in rushing, and also 17th in third down, as we noted earlier. Oh, and second in points behind Washington at 51.6.
Yeah. Well, and then, I mean, you just look at this, like defensively, yards allowed. Again, level of competition, we totally understand this. Just because Washington went and beat the hell out of a really bad Michigan State team doesn't mean Michigan State was much of a challenge. But when you're talking over 100 yards difference in yards per game allowed, that says a lot. Because last year, this number for us was probably more, almost 400 yards. Last year. It was probably almost 400 yards a game last year. It was bad, you know. So these are just the rough numbers we're looking at. We're not going too in depth right tonight, but these are the types of numbers I like to see. Obviously, this is the thing: will our secondary hold up? Because for a team that's throwing 450 yards a game, basically, the secondary is going to have a long day.
Well, if we can get Kyrie back, I don't think it'll be such a long day for the secondary at all.
If he's back and he's 100%, that's a key thing. If he's back 100%, I'm actually not going to worry too much about the passing game. We might give up a little short yardage stuff here and there and let him move the ball a little bit, but don't give up, like last year, just don't give up the dumb explosive plays. Don't give up those out of position, broken coverage type plays, or like Texas Tech, where we had a couple of those. Don't give those up.
I think you hit it right on that. I think that's the key. I mean, they have four big wide receivers between Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, and Jeremy Bernard. You know, they have some legitimate threats on the outside who are phenomenal. With that being said, Arizona came in with a very clear game plan. They weren't about to let those explosive plays happen, and they executed that very well. And with that, they were able to force Washington into some mistakes. You know, they were able to get some 3-and-outs when they needed to, and I think that's kind of going to be Oregon's game plan as well. They're going to make sure, you know, the safeties are staying on top. They're not getting beat over their heads. I have a feeling that's kind of going to be the defensive game plan for that, because we know we're going to give up yardage, right? I don't think it's realistic, just given the quality of opponent, to expect that we hold them to 200 yards passing, even 250 yards passing. You know, that's their bread and butter. That's their identity. We know what's going to happen. And to be honest, there probably will be a time in this game where they do give up a big play in the passing game. You know, it's just when they attack with that type of frequency, it's bound to happen at some point. It's like Ben said, it's all about limiting it, though, you know, limiting those massive plays. And I think that's going to be the focal point of the defense. You know, if they beat us with our ground game, I mean, more credit to them. You know, obviously we didn't see it coming. Nobody would see it coming. Their ground game is ass. So if they could do that, I mean, I guess more power to them. Congratulations. We'll see it in the Pac-12 championship game. Wink, wink. But yeah, it's all about limiting the big plays on the defensive side of the ball. I think that is the single biggest key for this game.
Yeah, I mean, you know, somebody mentioned it earlier that, you know, Arizona dropped 8 back, rushed 3. But I don't think that'll kind of be our game plan. I think
it's one of them bowls.
I think based on what we have, I think our game plan is definitely going to be to limit those explosive plays, because that's what killed us last year. That's what made the game a shootout last year, was those explosive plays.
Oh, that's facts. And I think, to be honest, I think what's going to play a major factor in this game are Nico Reed and Dante Manning. I think we know what Jay Flo and Kyrie Jackson are able to do. It's all about who's going to be able to cover, Jeremy Bernard and Jalen McMillan. We know what the two outside dudes can do. Those guys are absolute burners. The Roma Dunza, the dude's going to be potentially a first round pick. We know what to expect with that. I think what's going to happen here is we need to make sure it's these other dudes, these complementary receivers who aren't causing that damage. And that's kind of where the Nico Reeds and the Dante Mannings of the world come in. I think next week of all weeks, it's going to be absolutely vital that they play up to their potential.
They're going to have to, whether they like it or not. You're not playing against the same type of competition as you were over the past 5 weeks. You're going to have to live up to your potential at this point and leave it all on the field.
Yeah, I think next week they're definitely. I think this team's going to be ready to go. I think Lanning's going to have them firing and fired up, and weather could play a key part in this. I just hope it doesn't rain like cats and dogs, because
that could be an advantage for us, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could. I just don't like sloppy field play because you just never know what's going to happen.
You never know exactly.
I think this is the key one.
Sack Penix.
Penix won't be able to throw the ball very deep if he's getting sacked all the time. I think if Oregon can get 3 to 4 sacks total in this game, 3 to 4, that would be at least a couple drives killed for Washington.
You turn him into Anna Penix, and they're going to be using their backup quarterback.
We don't want to say that, but I mean, sacks on Penix. So the point is, it could kill a couple of drives, and that could be a 14-point swing.
Honestly, I mean,
it'd be huge.
Not even sacks necessarily. It's like the QB hurries. If you can keep this man under pressure and you can make his feet uncomfortable, like we did with Shedeur, we see what happens. When you're forced to make plays with your legs and kind of think on your feet while you're being chased by a 300-pound animal, you never know what happens there. And I think that's absolutely a very good point, Raymond. I think, that defensive line is going to play a massive, massive part in that game too, because if there's no pressure and Michael Penix has 6 seconds to drop back and throw, yeah, of course, our D-backs probably aren't going to be able to trail these dudes for 6 seconds at a time playing schoolyard bullshit football. But if you can force him into making some of these quick decisions, some of these quick throws, making reads B, C, and D, I mean, good things are going to happen for our defense, absolutely.
Well, I think it's kind of, in some of the games Washington has lost with Penix quarterback, when he does get flustered in the pocket and he has to kind of get out is when he kind of makes more of those mishap throws, more of those overthrows and short throws. Like, he doesn't like to be disrupted in the pocket. He doesn't like to be disrupted whatsoever.
I will say Penix is still way better than Shedeur.
So facts. That's strictly comparison of game plan. Strict comparison. Penix is, in my opinion, people obviously you go in the media and they're going to tell you Penix is the second coming of Jesus. But yeah, I would take, Shedeur. I think Michael Penix is at this point a much more polished quarterback just in terms of the reads and the decision making that he makes. We got our hands full. And there's, don't get me wrong, I hate UW just as much as anybody else, but I got to be realistic about the situation, and I respect him. I respect Michael Penix. I respect those receivers. We got to execute on our game plan too.
That's a good question, Trevor. I'm not 100% sure on that because a lot of the top 10 teams have good defense but no offense. Or they have a good offense but at least average defense, mediocre defense even. But so I couldn't answer that question. I'm going to say probably a couple, 2 or 3 at least. Like Penn State maybe.
I could
see Penn State being in there. maybe Michigan. I don't think Michigan's top 10, but maybe Michigan's top 10 of offense. And Oregon, yes.
Oklahoma could be up there. They have another great defense this year.
Oklahoma could be in there, but they're not in the top. Well, yeah, Oklahoma's in the top 10. Sorry, not ranking. Sorry, total just team, not the ranking of the team. Yeah, Oklahoma might be in there.
Yeah,
Texas,
but I mean,
Texas might be. Also,
I mean, regardless, certainly to Trevor's point, there's not very many, and Oregon's one of those teams who are very close to that at this point, if not already there. It's clearly we were just looking at Washington, their defensive rankings. They're not good. So if you're a UW fan, I really encourage you to look at it. It makes me put a smile on my face. But yeah, Oregon's sound on both sides of the ball this year. What am I seeing, Spaz? I see.
What are we looking at?
I've just seen some man videos.
What is this?
What am I looking at?
That was a comment that somebody put up: when a husky slaps us, do we turn the other cheek?
Like, what are we looking at? I was like,
it's called fishduck.com.
I like how Spaz is on an Oregon show searching other Oregon sites.
No, it's off our Oregon Ducks football Facebook page. And it's an article from fishduck.com. When a husky slaps us, do we turn the other cheek?
Oh, God.
Well, at least Raymond's digging it. I mean, to be fair, when I came onto this Oregon Duck show tonight, I was not expecting to see a massive pair of man titties. So, I mean, Spaz, I will say you caught me off guard. Congratulations.
Well, you brought up Jonathan Smith and then those. So
we know what's on Spaz's mind tonight.
I just like good trolling shit.
Gentlemen, we have a long week and then some.
Yeah.
To think about and stew in our hatred and come up with some good things for next week. Do you guys have any final I don't want to say mid-season because it's not really mid-season, but it's our bye week, so it's kind of close. Any kind of final thoughts of what we've kind of gone over tonight, especially with how the season's gone so far? Good, bad, looking forward to something, Don't say national championships. I swear to God. I will cut you off the stream right now if you curse us like that.
I am working on JJ Burton and a couple other possible guests for next week. We will see.
We love guests.
We had one.
Yeah, I know. We'd love to have one. In terms of mid-season stuff, I think for me, it's if we can just remain consistent with what we've seen so far, the defensive side of the ball specifically, I think we know what our offense brings to the table, and I think we're all kind of surprised with the defense. I know when we did our initial show prior to the season started, we said if Oregon's defense could be in the top third of the country, we would be happy. We've gotten that and some to this point. If our defense can get through this absolute brutal stretch playing some of these opponents and still remain in the top, third of the country, if not higher, I will be absolutely thrilled. So that's kind of my key, just based on what we've seen this year and going forward. I think, the defense playing to the caliber the defense has been playing. That's something I really hope to see going forward.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I mean, I just gotta say consistency, like showing up every week, being ready to go, ready to fire on all cylinders is really kind of all I really gotta say.
I'm not on the same thing. No injuries, no key injuries this year, and just seeing the defense do what they're doing so far and staying in that mode. Even if our offense is sluggish for a day, I hope too. If the defense plays like it does, I think we'll be all right. So consistency is the same, but yeah, no injuries, and just the defense just keep doing what they're doing because it's beyond our expectations at this point. I mean, even by our score predictions, which brings us to our final topic really fastly. It's not score projection time because we're not doing that till next week.
Yeah, that's right.
But congratulations, Derek.
Thank you, thank you.
Golf clap. Only from one of us. Oh, no, there we go.
Oh, I like Spaz's dance. Hell, that's what I like, Spaz. That's the energy we need right there.
I lost by 1 point, I think, the week before, and this week I lost by 2 points. So, I mean, Derek won. So that means Sean and Derek are tied for 2 in score projections. Spaz has 1, and I still have 0. I hate this game.
You wanted to do it.
I know. I'm the one who was like, hey, let's do score projections. And that's working out real well so far. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time being here. Because in the week we have to get in some of the dirty. At least we get a weekend off. We don't have to worry about anything.
Stress-free weekend in theory.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to get the text from Mark on Saturday going, hey, where's your post-game show? I'm like, Mark, we have a bye week. And he'll be like, oh.
Yeah, that means it's a bye week for us.
I needed a night off. Trevor's giving some early predictions. 38-24? Maybe. We'll see. We're going to see. We're getting into next week, Trevor. Calm down.
I love the energy.
And other than Texas, Oklahoma, there ain't no real big games this week.
The following week, there are.
Yeah, it's a down week for college football in general. Any week the Ducks aren't playing, it's a sad week.
But next week there's some games.
There's only one I'm concerned about.
Exactly. We can talk about that on next Tuesday. Yeah. But for everyone here, Sean, I know everyone's stuff is in the ticker down below. Please go ahead and as usual, always promote yourself and where people can find you.
Yeah, y'all can find me on TikTok at ChubbyNerd5 or on Instagram at SeanHoward778. Whatever you feel like.
Absolutely. As always, hit me at Wait Who's Derek on Twitter. I've seen I got a couple followers from you guys. Keep the followers coming. I love the interactions.
And you can follow me over there somewhere. Over there. What's the other way? It's that way, yeah. One of those guys. There it is. At the Rocky Classic. I'm dyslexic, so you can't tell.
It happens when you're doing it on camera. Trust me, I do it all the time still. Well, everyone in the chat, we appreciate you. And this starts the long off week before we really get to hate week. Because those fucking Fuskies beat their ass this year. Oh, now I'm getting riled up.
And this is bye week. Next week is hate week.
Yes, this is bye week. Next week will be hate week. Officially.
Nothing but love over here, baby.
So, once again, gentlemen, I will say thank you very much. And just remark, because he's probably trolling us, I still want my cheeseburger.